Afia Business Report on the Afia Business Morning. I am Nnamdi Obayad. Of course, we're following up on our reports on lion bread and even lion water. Elijah Akuma joins us live from Nsukka'S, and here in the studio, we have another former lion and consumer of lion bread. Afia Chief Correspondent Nathalie Ukwu is here, and I'm sure 4 years of lion bread and okpa, and
Nnamdi, that was my only condition for being on the show. I said you would not say that. I realized you said it before I came, but for you to see me and still say that, I take the highest offense.
Can I say this? You are an apostle of okpa. You are always chastising me for not eating okpa, and you've told me of lion bread and the memories. I mean, and I understand, because when you're in school, those things that, will I say, sustain you and keep you, they hold a special place in my heart.
You just keep going on and on and on. You see, don't tell anything.
The reason I start from this,
broadcasters can't keep secrets.
The reason I started from here is this. Looking back now, it must, you know, some type of way to see what is supposed to be, as you told me in previous times, a self-sustaining endeavor coming to almost ruins like this. What's your reaction to the fact that the lion bread and lion water that has its ready-made market, students, staff, and the community all around the school in Nsukka cannot sustain itself? It's
really sad that universities like UNN were set up to be self-sustainable, but then we're seeing current times where a lot of these institutions that were put together, and I learned this from you actually, a lot of institutions that were put together to sustain university are falling apart. And it cannot be far-fetched from financing. Because when I was a student, I graduated in 2019. So between 2016 and 2019, lion bread was a staple on campus. It was either lion bread or Ife Best. And I would always pick lion bread. I really, really enjoyed it, because you know, when you taste good bread, it's not crummy, it really draws. And you know, when there's local bread and you now mix it with like bonvit, let me say hot chocolate, let me not spoil it. Let me not advertise. I don't know where Nnamdi got okpa from. I was not eating. It was either okpa or bread. I never joined the two together. Bread. No, that never.
No, see.
That never.
And in the University of Lagos, we used to put more inside bread. No, I'm not saying you did it. I assumed, because.
Then you are projecting, because
I assume.
You used to do momo and bread.
Yes, very well. It's a standard.
Oh, I didn't.
Momo and bread, akara and bread.
I didn't.
No, I'm not.
This it's not for me.
It's not an accusation. I just assumed that.
I didn't.
Because I did momo and bread, I did akara and bread, that people did okpa and bread. I just assumed.
Well, the assumption is false. It's a fallacy, actually.
I'm assuming.
Well, the assumption.
Even though I have people who have admitted to doing it, plenty.
Let me just say this. I did not do it.
Okay, let's leave okpa and bread. And let's go back to lion bread.
Lion bread.
You were talking about the standard.
It was great, but then to look back at it now that Elijah has covered the story and seen the real outlook of the bakery, it tells you that we're not really helping ourselves in this country. Because students, one of the major challenges they face is access to food, enough food, and all of that. And that's why parents are always worried, asking if their children are eating well. So you have, at least you feel this kind of comfort if you know that they have access to this food within the campus and even outside. Because lion bread was not just sold within UNN, it was also sold outside. But now it's falling apart because they don't have cost of living crisis, no access to financing. And then you're not even seeing a hope. Because who are they going to even complain to? Is it the federal government? Is it the university authorities? Who is going to help them? And if you really look into this, you might realize that there have been allocations for maintaining a lot of these institutions, but where is all the money? So we always want things to work in this country. University should have farm, it should have a bakery, it should have an institution that produces water, because it creates employment on campus, it helps practical training of students. But at the end of the day, it's just left to
none of these things ever happen.
None of these things ever happen.
Never do.
And you know, it's so sad that when you see places falling apart this way, you still have those dedicated, loyal staff that still go to work every day to try to make good of the little that they have. And even then, our leaders can't have empathy enough to keep it working.
Our leaders. let me come You know, I'm sorry. That was reflex. That laughter at taking our leaders. It's because I think we've reached the point in Nigeria where we will have to agree that we have rulers and not leaders. But let's bring in Elijah here. Elijah, you were at the bakery yourself. So let's get a first-hand experience from you. What exactly is the state of that bakery?
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Nnamdi, and good morning, Ms. Nathalie. It's a pleasure being here. Okay. A few days ago, I ran a story about lion bread here in Nsukka, the university environment. Okay, first of all, the story was based on commodity prices and then how the high cost of raw materials is affecting the production and then patronage from customers. But then, looking at the structure of the environment and the bakery itself, it's obvious that they are struggling. Okay, towards the last interview with the manager, he expressed his challenges or the challenges they have as a bakery, aside the high cost of commodities or raw materials. We also see that they are having technical issues. Okay, there's no constant light, and then you also see that the place is falling apart. Okay, if you see the environment, it's not giving, if I may use that term. The environment is, in my personal opinion, the first time I stepped into the environment, I actually thought it was an agricultural environment where you just do farming or something, until I had to talk with the manager, and then he took me around, and then we saw the facilities they have inside. Some of them are okay, but their production rate has gone very low. Okay, the production rate is quite low due to the increase in the cost of raw materials. Specifically, the manager complained about increase in flour and sugar, where he made an outcry that if the government could do something about price control, if there's a way they could interfere in price control in the prices of especially flour and sugar, then they can manage and look for how to figure out what they call it, ground oil and other ingredients or items they make use of at cost of production. So, of course, the bakery is struggling to maintain stability and then to continue production.
So, I mean, he mentioned something now, that the place is very unkempt. He even thought it was an agricultural center. So I'm getting a lot of overgrown weeds and plants around the place. They rightfully mentioned high cost of raw materials. We know everything is expensive. But if you're meant to be a self-sustainable university environment, it means that most of the factors of production you need, the university should be doing them.
That's right.
Shouldn't there be a flour mill in the university on a small scale?
Nnamdi, that is what we're looking at. When the elements of the value chain are being disrupted down the line, you have those that are actually holding on to a single thread, suffering. So now, who knows if there was actually a farm or a mill or something like that in the works? A flour mill.
Even a poultry for eggs.
Yes, back in the day, Nnamdi, I'm sure, even if there were none, there were plans for. But now when those things are not being provided, when those things are not working, this is what you have. This is what you have. Because right now they're complaining cost of raw materials are high. But then, okay, let's talk about water.
Yeah.
Lion water is supposed to, be retailed and sold. It's manufactured by the university.
Yeah.
And then you also need water for baking, for instance. Sometimes you need pure water, like proper water to use, clean water. So Lion water would have, but you're seeing even Lion water on its own is struggling. And that is how we kill things. That is why things are dying. Because we don't understand that when we mess up, when we destroy, when we fail to keep one part of the value chain alive, it's a domino effect on everything else. But we're in Nigeria, so
I mean, because you've talked of Lion water now as part of the value chain of, Lion bread. I'm assuming that UNN has farms, maybe Lion farms. So, I mean, poultry, sugar. Sugar you might have to buy. I mean, sugar production is not something that is cheap. Let's even say you buy your flour. Every other thing, buy your yeast, some things. But one thing they mentioned was no lights.
Yes.
So the school can't generate power.
Well, the school probably can generate power, but I think it's coming from, you see, UNN is,
No,
I think,
when
one
I
of
say
the latest,
not for the whole school now.
one of the recent reports I read was that UNN is supposed to be one of the universities that will start to benefit soon from 24-hour electricity. While the details of that are still quite unclear, but UNN is supposed to start to benefit. But right now, I realize, and it's great that we recognize it, that the power situation on campus has not been the best.
Well, I know it hasn't been, because I've gone for a couple of events there where there was even quarrel about when the gen should come on. So I'm very sure this is 1, 2, 3 events that there's no light there. And I ask this because to even start thinking far, at a point like this, even the manufacture of the cellophane bag for the bread and the plastic bottle for the UNN, for the water, or if they're even doing a pure water variant, the sachet, should be done on campus by now. These are things that a university can do very, very easily. But we're seeing that even getting the bread out, just the bread, not the surrounding value chain, the bread is a problem.
Yes.
You mentioned there might have been allocations before. Of course there were. People were giving money. Why is it that we don't ever go backwards and probe what happened to the money?
Because the system does not work. Because people have found a way to defend themselves even when they're not doing the right thing. People have talked about regional governance in many instances. People are saying that Nigeria should become like the US, where you have your own government, your own police, you know, everything is regionalized. Because right now, you have a case where all power crescendos at the top.
Yeah.
And then it's supposed to go down to the various regions, to the various states, but it's not working. Talk about presidential visits. Okay, Tinubu has visited Enugu, Anambra, going to Afia. Is that enough? Can that visit track all the things that are going on in the state?
Yeah.
So until you have a system that the government is closer to the people, and not just government being closer, but having that power to control resources without having to go through the whole federal system and the rest, then that's when you start to see true progress. So now, how would the federal government know the state of UNN?
When they don't even... I wonder who was the last president to visit UNN?
When the president came to Enugu, did he visit UNN?
He didn't get to.
Exactly. So
No,
then...
I wonder who was the last president, actually?
To visit UNN. That's
something we need to check.
Because Unilag, at least, I think they're closer to... So somehow I think it's...
Oddly enough,
the state of
oddly
UNN.
enough, I can say the same thing for Unilag.
Yes.
Who was the last president to visit? I think there's a lack of importance placed on universities till...
Or is the ASU president being saddled with that role?
I think I think, and I know this might get me into trouble for saying it, but I think our universities have lost the moral ground to make demands to the president, because they themselves are fighting to be made vice chancellors so they can be recs for elections, so that they can be settled greatly to affect the outcome of elections.
Have you read Lord of the Flies, Nnamdi?
No.
Great. Lord of the Flies basically showcase a situation where children were involved in a plane crash. They arrived on an island, they crashed into an island. Everything was going well. They were civilized. But then when they started to get hungry and they started to become aggressive because of how long they were on the island, the two leaders started clashing. You had the hero, the villain, and eventually the other children, who are just more or less followers, started to kill themselves. They started to have angry mobs and the rest. They even put someone's pig head on a stick or so and flies. They became inhumane. They became like animals. Like what you would say, animals that belong in a cage, right? That's what's happening. These are all distractions. When things are not working at the top, and we know, the worst thing is that we know it's not working, but because there are private interests, because of greed, we want it to stay that way. And that's the problem. So until we start getting it right, until we get that government that is closer to the people, until we really ask the question, who is really willing and able to run the University of Nigeria, Nsukka? Who is really going to be able to take up responsibility and give the school what it needs? The VC, can the VC do it on his own?
No, it must be the VC and the Senate.
Exactly.
And then even these parts of the value chain, where is the, will I say, economic council of the university that will decide, okay, for engineering, the things you're going to build, for sciences, the things you're going to produce. Where are all these people? They're not there. But Elijah, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
So what is the difference in price now? How high has the price of lion bread gone?
Okay, when I spoke with one of the sellers yesterday, most of them were quite careful on releasing certain information, but the price has changed compared to what they used to get before. There's over 100% increase in price. I think one of the videos I have from last coverage, she showed me a small size of the bread they used to buy 15 naira, but currently they buy that little loaf at the cost of 300 naira, which is way too high. Not to talk of the big one that it's over 1,000 plus now, if not more than that. So this has also affected the quantity of purchase that customers are able to buy from the bakery. And again, since there is this increase in price, especially the small size, because speaking with Mr. Sullivan, the manager, the other day, he said that to make sure that they maintain customer patronage, they had to produce another size of bread, a smaller loaf, so that people could afford to buy. Now, that was just a ploy or a strategy to make sure that people keep buying. But because of the increase in the big size, there's now a massive reduction in the number of people who come to buy this bread. And you have complaints from buyers such as that the bread has no weight, And then one of that respondent complained, though she just mentioned it off the camera, she didn't want to come on air. She said that the bread does not last. So you buy bread today, few days it spoils, and then they had a lot of complaints, but they couldn't bring that up on air because they said they don't want to have any issue with anybody. But it still boils down to the fact that bakeries are struggling, Lion Bread not exempted, they are struggling to maintain quality even with the increase in raw materials. That's actually the exact word of Mr. Sullivan, that they are trying to maintain the quality of their product even as they are struggling with the increase in raw materials, which is now affecting how customers see their product. Again, I also heard from a staff yesterday. Also, she didn't want to come on air with that information. She complained that this particular bread used to be their choice everywhere in town. Okay, they always like buying Lion Bread, like buying it for their children for lunch and the rest of them. But with the increase in the price of the bread, there's this change in mind, there's this change in patronage and the rest of them. So price is really something they are struggling with. So both the bakery themselves and the customers are complaining bitterly. Of course, again, these are ripple effects of factors that are not considered, factors that lead to these issues. So that one of the stories we ran on the cost of fufu, that's the cassava we call abo around here. Now, you see that most of these sellers complain that where these products are coming from, that's the farm, most of the farmers no longer cultivate. And those that dare to cultivate are doing that at the risk of being hunted down by the herdsmen. So if security issues are not checked, so it will affect these raw materials coming from the farm. And when we have limited quantity or volume of these raw materials coming into the market, of course, we should know that it will affect the cost of cost of things in the market. So until we check some of the primary causative agents of these issues, people will keep complaining. So that's where we are.
Very well said, Elijah. Natalie,
yeah.
I mean, you see what he's talking about, and this now takes us all the way back to the beginning, to where we started, which is the fact that the university should be self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Because a self-sustaining system is to insulate it from a lot of these things. If farmers are not able to go to the farm, and the university has the farm,
that's actually
it's
a question.
insulated from all those issues, and can provide a secondary option for people who still want to get things cheap.
That's what I was even going to ask, Elijah. What self-sustaining institutions can we say that UNN has right now? Do they have a farm? Is there a farm on campus that supplies raw materials? Because Nandi and I have been talking about it. Do we have a farm on campus? I understand is
there a poultry?
Yes, there's a place called Vets, right, that they have. So tell us about the self-sustaining facilities currently available or currently in place right now in UNN.
Okay, talking about this area now, self-sustaining facility, well, I may not be too accurate with this information currently right now, but then I remember that I've once visited UNN farm some years back. That should be a year ago or 2 years ago, when I wanted to make inquiries about snail farming and how it is done. Okay, so I felt that, okay, this is a university, they should have a lot of information and a lot of snails. So personally, I went to the farm, which is very far from here. Okay, so I went to the farm, looked around, and of course, they had few animals. They were doing well in some areas, but there were no snails. The piggery were few, the cattle were few. I think rabbitry, I'm not sure I can remember the rabbitry session, but the UNN farm is as of then was struggling. I don't know how it is now, because I remember I spoke with one of the, I don't want to mention the person for security purposes too, but he said, because then I had some snails with me, so I wanted to confirm how these snails operate, function. So when I told you the number of snails I had, he exclaimed and said, oh, wow, you even have more snails than the university. And I was like, oh, this is serious. So he granted me permission to go to the farm and then see how things are. He linked me up to somebody who put me through. The farm, we have knowledgeable workers, people who know how these things or how the animals can function or can function, but there are no animals on the farm as of then. I don't know of now. So maybe we may need to make a deeper inquiry and research into the self-sustainability nature or structures that the University of Nigeria has put in place to checkmate some of these things. Because if the University of Nigeria can actually put their attention into these, I think that UNN can produce power, UNN can produce all the raw materials they need to function, they need for Lion Bread to function. And the way I'm looking, Lion Bread may not completely be a school-funded project or infrastructure. It is a private infrastructure, because if it is a school infrastructure, then we shouldn't be having what we are having on ground there. Because one of the sellers I spoke to, from the responses she gave, I deduced that Lion is a private owned organization more than it is a school-owned organization.
That's another thing we need to investigate.
Yeah.
I wish we had more time. We've run out of time, but I think we found another point to start with, which is the ownership of Lion Bread. Thank you very much, Elijah, for joining us this morning. Well, thank you so much, Nathalie, for joining us as well. I mean, in a bid to answer the question, we opened up even more.
I know, like Elijah has just given himself fresh assignments.
Even more questions. But thank you for being here this morning. I know we'll have this. We will continue this. It might be on the AM show set. It might be here.
Right.
But this topic is I mean, it's a brand new question: the ownership of Lion Bread, and maybe even the ownership of many things we think are public ventures. And thank you to all of us who have been here since 7 a.m. this morning. That's all we can take on the Eastern Business Report. But the Afia Business Morning is not yet over. The market Pekin is ready to take you to meet the traders, see the products, how market is coming up right now. So don't go anywhere. Of course, the program will be back tomorrow when the exchanges reopen for trading at 10 a.m. Stay tuned to channel 254 DSTV, 17 GoTV, and of course 748 Free TV. Till I see you tomorrow, have a very profitable business day.